So let's have a look now at how to turn an individual output on or off using the GUI. Now, of course, normally you won't need to do this because outputs are turned on or off under the control of sensors, maybe analog sensors or on-off sensors like PIRs or switches. And so the GUI is not normally needed for turning outputs on or off because the system just operates autonomously without even needing the GUI to be operating at the time. But for test purposes you might want to do this, so let's have a look and see how it's done. So we start off in user mode, which we're in at the moment, and if I just zoom in on the outputs are all at the moment configured as luminaires, as lights, and they're all white, which actually indicates that the outputs are turned on. So physically there is mains at these outputs. So if there were lights connected, they would be lit up at the moment. So if I click on one of them, just pick one, when I click on it, it's selected and its outline becomes bold, showing that it's selected. And you'll notice that in the control panel, the switch button has become active. So if I click on the switch button, after a second or two, that light will turn black. And that indicates that that output has turned off. Now that delay there, that couple of seconds delay, is purely an update to the GUI. With it being a browser-based GUI, there's always a certain amount of delay, but the physical output on the unit will have responded immediately to the button press, so there's no delay in the real-life scenario. So if I press switch again, the light comes back on. And an alternative way of doing it, if I pick another one, let's pick this one over here, I can double click straight onto the icon, and again the light will turn off, and when I double click again it will simply turn back on again. There's also a slider that's appeared here, a percentage slider, and I can move that up and down. Now what that does is it sets a threshold level for the individual light or a dimming level in conjunction with an analog sensor, and I'll cover how to use that a bit later. It's basically an alternative way of setting up a closed loop control other than using the set point that I mentioned in an earlier video. There are two different methods and we'll look at both. One final note of caution on turning lights or other outputs on or off directly from the GUI. If you have a system that is set up with sensors and switches and so on, if you turn the output off on the GUI, it will go off and it will stay off, which can be useful if you want to actually, say, turn the lights off in a room and ignore the PIR sensors in that room. But in order to get the system to work autonomously again, you would need to leave that output switched on again. So after you've been doing this, it's usually a good idea to leave the outputs turned on.